Get your spaghetti ready, baby, because this is Funny Like a Clown podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth. June 12th, 2022. It's episode 153. As always, today's episode is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce for the spicy, sweet, savory taste of game time. Put the whamma jamma in your mouth. Go get some. www.gvegas.webs.com. We got a commercial coming out soon. I don't know when, but soon for G Vegas, and it's going to go through the roof once you see my pretty face. So you can listen to me. So you can watch the podcast on YouTube and get the video version, okay? But they're really going to make me look good in this commercial. But you know, it looks good. This comedian we're going to discuss tonight and is Mr. Dom Irrera. And that's why I said get your spaghetti ready because he's an Italian comic and rich Italian heritage. Which he based his comedy routine around telling life stories in comedy. And and I've said that before on the podcast, the real life stuff's funnier than anything you can make up. And grew up in an Italian family. I guess he said it was 3 floors and 4 generations of his family living there. So I mean, when you got your grandmother you can make fun of, you got your parents you can make fun of, you got your siblings you can make fun of. I mean, there's all kinds of all kinds of material right there, right in your own household. You ain't got to really make nothing up because there's constantly something funny happening when you got that many people living in a house. And I guess you put the Italian twist on it because if they're all Italian, then there's some sort of maybe it's not enough spaghetti left for everybody. Who knows? Let's see. What's his credits? I mean, I'd like to have this guy's credits in comedy. He was on the Oprah Winfrey Show, on The View, The Tonight Show during the Carson years, The Tonight Show also during the Leno years, Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson, Late Show with David Letterman. I mean, can you imagine that? Just, I mean, being on The Tonight Show with Carson, you were an instant made comic. So once he was on there, boom, guy was a made comic. But I mean, to get on, another generation to be on the Leno version of it also. I mean, that many generations later, you're still relevant in comedy. That's survival right there. And boy, when you can survive in comedy, a cutthroat business, man, that's an impressive thing right there. Let's see. 22 appearances at the Kilkenny Comedy Festival in Ireland, more than any other comic. And he was big into the festivals. Yeah, I'm from Boston here, out in Beantown. They do have a Boston Comedy Festival, but I never chose to get involved. I mean, if they invited me down, I'd probably go. But I mean, I never wanted to apply for it. It's like, I think it's some like $50 application fee, and that don't guarantee you're going to get in. It's kind of a, and then I don't know where. If you're doing wholesome family comedy, like about your Italian family, you're accepted. But where I do, not that I'm a dirty comic, but I pick controversial subjects. So I mean, that's not always acceptable. So even Sam Kinison, I mean, he's my hero in comedy. He said he never did contests because it was material. Even if it was killer funny, his material would never win one because it wasn't, it wasn't the family atmosphere that they want in things like that. He was more of an underground comic, and that's why I do the podcast, because I'm an underground comic too. So I can do what I do here on Funny Like Clown podcast, where you can't so much in comedy festivals. Did one episode of Seinfeld on NBC, which Seinfeld, legendary comic. If you're an extra in Seinfeld, you're working in comedy clubs, okay? If you just go down, comedy club, hey, can I perform? What you done? I was an extra in Seinfeld. Boom, they're booking you because that's advertisement right there. This guy actually got to act in an episode of Seinfeld, so that's cool. Let's see. On CBS is The King of Queens and a regular on Dr. Katz, Professional Therapist. So a lot of credits to his name. He was a judge on the Supreme Court of Comedy on DirecTV, and I have no idea what that is, but I guess if you're on the Supreme Court of Comedy, that's the highest level of judging comedy you can possibly be. So it must have been some kind of comedy contest or some sort of comedy thing where he was judging it, obviously. But yeah, man, hey, the guy's been in the business forever, so I could see a guy with that many years in the business, he'd be judging somebody else. Why not? I got a big thing coming up, and I can't break it yet because you got to do the I can't leak it out yet. You have to do the big what do they call it, presentation when you do something. So, but I got big stuff coming up in voice work, and I've always said voice work, it's a big thing in comedy and money making thing. But this guy's done some voice work for Nickelodeon on Hey Arnold and Back at the Barnyard, and in one of my underground favorite movies. I mean, the Big Lebowski. Okay, he was in that too. And the Big Lebowski, my friend had never seen it. I was like, I said it was a great B movie. I told him. He said, "What do you mean by B movie?" I'm like, "Well, it's not a movie I'd pay to go see at the movies. But if you got a weekend to kill and you sit at home, it's great to watch on TV." But years later, after I told him that, it has turned into a cult classic. And if they ever came out with a Big Lebowski 2, I would pay money to go see it at the theater because it's become that big of a cult classic in everybody's hearts. I guess it's got a good underground following where it's turned into a mainstream movie this many years later. Did put out a CD back when you could put out CDs and make money off of them without the free downloading. Greatest Hits Volume 1, Don Irrera, Greatest Hits Volume 1. But I mean, I remember the days, when Eddie Murphy put out his back, we listened to cassette tapes back then. Me and my buddy would take our Trans Ams out and we'd pop the cassette in and we just crack up together, drive around, listen to these great comedy albums. Where you miss out on that nowadays. But I guess if you got like satellite radio, get XM or whatever, they got a constant comedy channel. You could do it that way too. But I mean, they're not putting out the great new material. You got to listen to the older CDs. I mean, it's just comedy specials now. But I think you really lost something being able to drive around in your car and you lose something. You don't get to drive around in your car and listen to the great comedy CD anymore. Where you gain something, you can pull your phone out and watch the comedy special on YouTube on your phone, which we didn't have that back in the day. So I guess when one door closes, another door opens. We lost the great CD, but we gained a great comedy special you can watch on your phone. Been in some films I recognize, some films I don't recognize, but Don Irrera seen in the films Splits, Hollywood Shuffle, That's Adequate, Silence of the Hams, not Lambs, the Hams, The Big Lebowski, as we mentioned, A Man Is Mostly Water, Hey Arnold, the movie. We did like I mentioned, did some Nickelodeon work. I'd love to do some Nickelodeon work. I remember watching that when my kid was young. I mean, I ain't watched it in years, but it was a cool channel to watch with him at that age. The Fourth Tenor, Barnyard, and the Bronx Bull, excuse me, not Ball, Bronx Bull. You want to have some cool TV shows? He did Scarecrow and Mrs. King. Now, if you're old like me, you remember that show, and if you're young, you have no freaking clue what I'm talking about. But yeah, Bruce Boxleitner and Kate Jackson, I remember, was a very good show, and I did enjoy it. Kate Jackson, she was one of the original Charlie's Angels, and that was like her follow-up show that she did, and I was a fan of the show and watched it. Let's see, it was on the Golden Girls, which, I mean, Betty White was on there and came up about the same time as Dom Irrera, so I mean, she did bring on a lot of friends in the comedy world, had them on Golden Girls. My sister Sam, that was Pam Dauber from Mork and Mindy. Yeah, she had her own spinoff for a little bit there. And let's see, the Gary Shandling Show, one of the classic shows, two comedians, Gary Shandling and Dom Irrera together. That's just classic comedy right there. My Two Dads, he was on. Lois and Clark, The Adventures of Superman. I was a fan of that show. I did watch. It was on, not when it was like prime time, but I remember they put it on mornings on some odd channel, like the reruns, and I used to watch it every day for an hour before work, before I went to work. And I think I seen most of the episodes, but it was a very good series. Which Dean Cain, he's the oldest living Superman still alive. Everybody who portrayed Superman's gone. He's the oldest living one that portrayed the character right now. And I met him at Comic-Con once. I got a picture with him and with my movies, superhero, the child support superhero, and the original Superman, Dean Cain. So yeah, that's a cool one to be on right there. Hercules, he was on that. I remember that was a big channel on, I think it was Fox TV. It was one of the, either that or UPN 30. It was one of the odd channels, but man, it was big at the time. I do remember that. I was on Home Improvement. Who could forget that one with Tim Allen? You get on there, you're doing good. Another one, Everybody Loves Raymond. Ray Romano. These are some huge names in comedy and some huge shows he's on right here. Becker, that was Ted Danson from Cheers. That was his follow-up show after Cheers. So yeah, just working with some of the biggest names in comedy here, man. The Drew Carey Show. How would you like to be on? Geez, with Drew Carey, another two great comedians. This is one of my favorite underground shows right here too. Crank Anchors on Comedy Central. He did a voice of a puppet there on Crank Anchors, where they did the crank phone calls there with the puppets. I love that show back in the day. And yeah, it's like you get a show like that, like Crank Anchors or something, and it's such a hit on Comedy Central and you love it. But then, once you're a hit on a small cable TV show like that, the big networks come looking for you, so you don't get years of great shows like that. I mean, I wish it had been on longer, but I think Jimmy Kimmel came up with the idea. Then he got his own show on Channel 5, the late night show. So it was See You Later Comedy Central, and we didn't get Crank Anchors or the Man Show. And I remember the Man Show; that was one of my favorite shows too. Lost everything once they brought him to the big network. Don Murray is also on the Comedy Central roast of Bruce Willis, and I've done a few local comedy roasts, but yeah, to be on the Comedy Central roast, that's the place to be right there. Which, well, they originally did them on, what's the place? The tip of my tongue, don't tell me. Down in New York, the Friars Club down in New York. That was who originally brought the roast, and Comedy Central stole the idea. Well, I think the original Comedy Central did. They did the roast from the Friars Club, and they just, hey, Friars Club, see you later. We're going to do our own roast. It kind of took over the idea. So, but originally, back when Dean Martin was doing all the great roasts, I believe that was the venue they used, was the Friars Club. It was like an enshrinement into the club. You only roast the ones you love. So, that's why you roast them, because you love them. You can only poke fun at people you love, so that's a great thing. Got his first big break was back on Rodney Dangerfield's Nothing Goes Right special on HBO. And comedy back then, when this guy was coming up, it's not like now where we got 24/7 comedy with YouTube and all the pay channels and all the pay radio. I mean, back then, it was the Tonight Show and a few late night, 2 a.m. odd shows. If you were lucky, if you wanted to see comedy, you had to go to your local club. That was why, if you did get on, the Carson Show, you were instant made because you couldn't see comedy anywhere else. So when Rodney did his specials, I said, when we did Funny Like a Clown podcast on Rodney, I said, for as great a comedian as he was, and I'd put him in the top 5, godfathers of our time of comedy. You're up there with Carlin, Pryor, Cosby, Steve Martin, and Rodney Dangerfield. They'll be the top 5. He did more for comedy by bringing the next generation forward. And Don Irrera was one of the guys he gave a break to, along with, Sam Kinison, Roseanne Barr, Andrew Dice Clay. I mean, these names, Tim Allen, we don't hear all these great names unless Rodney gives them a break on this special, which really gave the spotlight to young comedians back then, where nowadays, you get all these shows where you can get on and get exposure. There wasn't much exposure, and that was one of the main ones for bringing up young comics, was getting on that. Let's see. Also hosted HBO's One Night Stand, which he got a Cable Ace Award for, and got a second Cable Ace for. Well, that was just for not a series, a special. I'm sorry, One Night Stand. That was he did a 5-6 minute bit, whatever it was, on Rodney Danger's Nothing Goes Right. That went well. He got his own comedy special, One Night Stand. Won a Cable Ace Award for that. Then he had a series called Full Frontal Comedy, where he won a second Cable Ace Award. So, guy's doing some great stuff on cable right there. His third HBO special was called Command Performance. Host of Comedy Central's Offsides. I guess that was a comedy thing they did with the NFL Network there. And if you're with the NFL, that's big bucks right there, baby. I remember the only I thought it was a great idea to have a comedian. I remember they had Dennis Miller doing, what was it, Monday Night Play-by-Call, and nobody liked that. It was horrible. And who was it? Frank Caliendo. He did some work, which I actually love the work that he did with him. But some worked, some didn't. Apparently, Dom, he had a good show with the NFL going on there. He's been on Conan O'Brien show, another one of the late night shows right there. The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, which huge at the time. The Daily Show with Jon Stewart on Comedy Central. So apparently he's got a political view too. Part of the Just for Laughs Comedy Festival in Canada. So we've already talked about the Ireland one he did earlier. Now he's doing the Canada one. The Melbourne Comedy Festival in Australia. And the Assembly Hall Comedy Festival in Scotland. So this guy's like traveling the world appearing at comedy festivals. And why not? I mean, you get a good comedy festival. I mean, it's huge venues. You're going to pull thousands of people. I mean, yeah, you do a comedy club, you're hitting 200-300 people, in a bigger hall. But I mean, a comedy festival, that's by the thousands. You went from hundreds audience to thousands. So you want to make a name for yourself? Hit the comedy festivals right there. So see, the difference is most of us would have to pay to enter a comedy festival, where Dom is getting paid to perform at a comedy festival, and that's what happens when you've been on all the late night shows like he's been on. He's earned his ranks in the comedy world. One I did not know about him. This is cool. And if you go to his website, you can check this out. He's actually got his own podcast, which I didn't know. I mean, mostly it's a younger generation doing a podcast. I mean, I can't imagine, someone from Dom Irrera's, era doing a podcast. So he must, I assume, okay, that he's got somebody around the technical aspect of it, because most people his age, he's in his 70s, late 70s, don't even know how to run a computer. So I'd imagine he has somebody running it. He just talks and does the podcast himself. But it's live from the Laugh Factory, and Laugh Factory, it's one of the biggest comedy chains in the world. And yeah, I was out hanging out with Carl LeBeau there, Sam Kinnis's best friend at Laugh Factory out there in Vegas, and it's definitely one cool place to be right there. And I know a local comedian, Lenny Clark from Boston, he's performed out there, and they got like a big billboard like right in the main square of Vegas, right there, right on the big right square between 4 hotels, and it's like they put your name up there, and it's one hell of a thing to witness right there. So catch his podcast live from the Laugh Factory. Catch my podcast, Fun of the Clown podcast, because hey, we're celebrating 5 years. I just put out, man, I made a post of all the guests I had, and I had more guests on here than I've even imagined. But from local comics to national comics to just discussing the legends of comedy, I mean, you can't bring Carlin and Pryor back from the dead and interview them on a podcast, but damn it, we can talk about them. That's what we're doing here. We're exploring the history of comedy, and what a great exploration of Dom Irrera, the Italian comedy comic who just, a respected comic. You don't get on all these late night shows unless you're respected in the business. And this guy, from a 6-minute set on a Dangerfield special that broke him, he gets his own HBO special. Boom, everybody's loved ones, a Cable Ace Award. You're on all the late night shows, and years later, he's a legend of comedy. Everybody knows Dom Irrera, whether you're in the comedy world or not. And what a great, who knows? Maybe I'll go out for the Boston Comedy Festival this year, because I've been inspired by Dom Irrera. It's just, I've wasted money on stupider things, that's for sure. So, hey, who knows? We'll see what happens. Okay, but until next time, tell your friends, tell your neighbors. Let's get some more listeners in here. We're exploring the history of comedy. If you want to know the details about your favorite comic, this is the place to be. Funny Like a Clown, Funny Like a Clown podcast, brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce. Get over there, man. www.gvegas.webs.com. Get it shipped to your door. Go fresh. Tell them Dennis Wirth sent you from this podcast, and they might smile at you. I doubt they'll give you a discount, but they may say thank you to me for sending you over there, and then I get to bring you more podcasts. So how cool is that? I'm getting tired, man. Good night, guys. We'll see you next time. I love you. Keep them laughing.